Iran has an important choice, a chance to make a deal, a good deal, a wise deal. As part of that effort, the United States has imposed an ironclad blockade that grows more powerful by the day.
The Pentagon says the naval blockade on Iranian ports is tightening by the hour. This as a third U.S. aircraft carrier has arrived in the Middle East, the highest number deployed in that region in more than 20 years. Welcome to the Big Money Show. I'm Taylor Riggs, along with my co-hosts Dagan McDowell, Brian Brenberg, Jackie DeAngelis, and with us for the hour, Fox Business contributor Lou Bassanese. Great to have you.
Good to be here.
So the president says he is not in a rush to reach a peace agreement and wants it to be everlasting, but he will not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon.
This is all about a nuclear weapon. They cannot have the nuclear bomb, and they're not going to have the nuclear bomb. So we've taken out their military. We've hit about 75% of our targets, the little boats that they have running around with guns in them. We'll take them out, too, when we see them. But their Navy is gone, their Air Force is gone, their anti-aircraft is gone. Maybe they loaded up a little bit during the 2-week hiatus, but we'll knock that out in about one day if they did. We've done an amazing job. Their leaders are gone.
Lou, that's one of the problems. Iran can't figure out who their leader is. So there's a sort of some infighting going on. And we're also getting some other headlines that, according to some reports, Trump is sending Witkoff and Kushner to Pakistan. So you see dollar weakness and you see oil extending declines on the day. Equities were also near a record sort of coming into this. How do you view all this?
I view it as time is on our side. We have the leverage, and here's why. This is not just about a shipping blockade. It's about cash flow strangulation. Right? Iran makes money from oil. China, they were selling it to China in February and March. The longer you shut them in, the more their storage fills up, and they get to a point of no return where they can't recover all these lost reserves in oil that they can sell. So the clock is ticking for Iran economically, much more so than it is for the U.S. geopolitically. The days and the estimates that I see is like Iran has maybe 16 days to 60 days where they can fill up their storage, at which point you have to start shutting in production, which could permanently damage those reservoirs. So this is one of those things where the leverage increases and intensifies over time more for Iran. And then Europe, too. So the president is being very wise here. Europe is struggling with jet fuel price surges, right? Cutting flights, 20,000 flights from Lufthansa for over the summer period. Europe's got to step in here and be part of the peace process. Otherwise, they're going to economically hamstring themselves. So I think the president's right. Hey, we're willing to talk, but it's got to be everlasting. This has to be definitive. You better figure out who your leader is, because we have to make an agreement. Otherwise, your economy is going to be suffering way more than it is right now. And
none of us know what's going inside behind the scenes. But Jackie, in the introduction, we talked about the third U.S. aircraft carrier. We haven't been there since, I think it was the 2000s, right after maybe 9/11. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong on that. So that signals there's economic leverage that we talked about with this blockade, but some amping up on the military pressure as if maybe we're just in case, maybe we're just there, maybe we're ready to do something. How do you sort of perceive the military leverage as well as that economic leverage?
Trump is signaling all options are on the table. And Pete Hegseth in that speech was talking about the Strait of Hormuz and basically saying, you, Iran, need it way more than we do, the United States. And he's right about that. So they're using a two-tack approach. They've got their military assets in place if this does not go according to plan. And, you know, the cards are in the hands of the Iranians, how they want to play it. The foreign minister is saying that indeed they will go to Pakistan and they will have conversations about some sort of a deal. But you wonder where that's going to go, because they weren't able to do it last time with J.D. Vance brokering. I think this internal fragmentation is going to maybe be their undoing, because it would seem pretty impossible for them to find a consensus with different extremes within these groups. There's part of me that thinks that President Trump wants these conversations to, or wants to give them the opportunity for these conversations so they can kind of fragment and break themselves apart to a certain degree. President Trump also extending the waiver of the Jones Act for another 90 days. So that's going to keep oil moving for us a little bit easier without restriction. I spoke to Phil Flynn a little bit earlier, and he said that's great for the oil price, which was lower than it was yesterday. Last time I checked, just around $95 a barrel for WTI. But remember, Iran isn't moving any oil around because we've got that blockade in place. So I think the president has a great strategy going forward, and he's right in the sense that he doesn't have to do anything right now. They can choose their own adventure here, how they want to play this. The last thing that I'll say is yesterday in that press conference in the Oval Office, the camera was on the president. Couldn't see who was asking this question, but somebody asked him, and this is how hostile the media is, if he would consider using nuclear weapons on Iran. This whole thing is about destroying their opportunity and potential to use nuclear weapons on the world. Why would you ask the president a question like that? So that gives you a sense of, if you're watching other networks, the kind of coverage you're getting about this.
Dagan, I know you're watching oil and gas, those vessels. I also, we're going to talk about the Fed chairman in waiting in the next block. But there was an interesting note I read this morning that 1% higher interest rates adds $3.5 trillion in debt, just in terms of how much we're funding this. But I am pleasantly surprised that the 10-year is a very well-behaved 4.3 and pretty much not budging in the last couple days.
I read a report. I know you know what I'm talking about.
I hope so.
That it's not central banks buying our debt. It's now foreign private buyers.
Yep.
Some of this is, I think global bonds have had a crap week.
Yeah.
And so what is not great for sovereign debt and U.S. debt, some of this is expectations that regardless of what Kevin Warsh testified to, that we could be in a situation that the Federal Reserve will have to step in and be a buyer of our debt, even beyond how much the balance sheet is expanding now. It's close to $170 billion that it's increased since the beginning of December. It's not a lot, but it's way north still of $6 trillion when it was $800 billion before the financial crisis. So some of this is, hey, the Fed will step in and just create some inflation. That's good for stocks. I want to talk about oil. So Iran has been, this is according to the European Union's Sentinel-1 satellite, Iran has continued to load millions of barrels onto its super tankers. So it's clearly using those super tankers, although that they're docked. There was one very large tanker it's one of the VLCCs, the very large crude carriers, 2 million barrels of oil that was moored at Karg Island, that it showed that there were no ships on Saturday at Karg. So they're using these ships, even though they're not moving as oil storage.
No, they need to use it as
Right.
storage. Otherwise, you run into problems with capacity and then shutting in production, which is much more detrimental
Right,
long-term.
because it takes months. And the wells can be damaged permanently.
Exactly.
If you shut them in poorly. But that's not being sold, so that's not money to the regime. But the Dallas Federal Reserve did an updated energy survey, which I know Lou Bassney reads.
March 26th.
Yeah, no, they just updated it.
Oh,
on, man, get with
hot
the
off the
times.
presses. I'm off this one.
They did an
yesterday.
update to quiz. It was 78 exploration and production companies and 42 oil field services companies about their expectations for the energy market, and they're not optimistic about the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. 1/5 expect traffic through the Strait to return to normal by next month, but then 39% expect a recovery by August, and then 40% say it's going to be November or even later. And there's one comment, there are actual comments direct from these companies. This is their business. And it says, it's too early to tell for most things. The administration's comment about a, quote, Iran terror premium existing for decades with crude oil pricing is laughable. But now the administration has created one where it did not exist before. So higher oil for longer. Oil companies love that. not so much
No, but
somebody fighting inflation.
I would say this,
or
though.
somebody driving.
Yeah, but I've been arguing for low to mid 70s oil for a while. It just doesn't make sense for producers in the United States to go drill new wells. And if you looked at the March 26 update, the Permian break even for new wells was $69 a barrel, up from 62. You now see in this survey, which I just pulled up the update here, talking about what's going to be the change in domestic production in the Permian. And 30% are saying no real change at these prices, but some are saying a little bit, 250,000 to 500,000 more barrels per day. I think sustained prices above in the low 70s, which the curve is suggesting we'll get to in the fall, is going to lead to much more oil and gas production. So for the next Q1, Q2 reports, oil and gas companies in the U.S. are going to have windfall profits because they're just distributing it out to shareholders.
I was just speaking about it from an economic standpoint, a sentiment standpoint for the American voter and consumer, and also from an inflationary standpoint, or what the Federal Reserve has to do ultimately.
Yeah, you boil it all down, it's midterm math, right? We got to get gas prices well into the threes. Otherwise, the midterms are going to be a lot tougher for Republicans.
What was that last line those guys said about terror premiums?
The administration said that there has been an Iran terror premium in oil for decades.
Yeah.
And they said that's
no.
laughable, but now you've created one, in essence.
I think that's laughable. With all due respect to whoever said that. Like, okay, you don't think there's an Iran terror premium? Fine, because they don't have a nuclear weapon yet, and they don't have the capability to strike. What kind of Iran terror premium would there be in 5 years when they can fire a missile 5,000 miles with a nuclear warhead on it, right? I mean,
and then shut down the strait.
I get
and charge a toll.
I get like this. It's midterm math, and oh my goodness, what's going to happen in 2 months from now? And fine, you can't ignore that stuff. But my goodness sakes, you do not pay a president to think in 2-month increments. Like, you shouldn't have one then. Forget about it. And I know a lot of them do. I know politicians think in 2-month increments. But if that's what President Trump is doing, then he is as failed a president as anyone else who came before him in the last 47 years. I mean, that's not.
But what this person is saying is accurate. That if you leave anyone in charge in the Iranian regime, unless it is completely destroyed, that the Hormuz will remain a question mark, a choke point, and oil prices will remain elevated. That's the premium that they're talking about. And quite frankly, voters elected affordability and lower prices, and not fighting for overseas. They elected President Trump for America first.
But,
yeah, well, okay, but
you got to tell me how this is America first when I'm paying more than $4 for
I would say a terrorist not coming after me, not coming after the United States of America is America first.
I agree with you, Dagan, that this regime completely has to go. Any tentacle is not going to be able to be trusted long term. And I think there's part of me internally that believes that the president understands that this is more, these talks are just semantics. I believe him when he speaks and he promises things generally, even though I understand circumstances could change. And he initially talked about giving the Iranian people an opportunity to take their government back. I think this is part of his 3D chess of allowing them to gnaw at themselves and fight internally until ultimately they fall. That's my prediction. Maybe it's my selfish hope. I'm not really sure. But I think he understands that, until you have a different leader, Venezuela is a totally different situation. And so that's why we're able to proceed the way we are. We'll see how it plays out, but I think that he expects this to happen now that, you brought up the point yesterday that they're suffering their economic consequences harder than they were before because the rules have changed. I think he expects that breakdown to happen sooner rather than later. I still think he sees a quicker resolution to this.
I just fear what happens if the Democrats take control in November. Look no further than the Southern Poverty Law Center. You don't think that they'll destroy anybody and everybody who gets in their way, starting in the White House?
I don't disagree with that, but the Democrats are going to win an election sometime. And they're probably going to win it this fall, even if we didn't go into Iran.
I also agree with that.
What, 95% of the time, that's what happens? I mean, if you think the entire fate of the Republic hinges on this midterm election, God bless you, but there's a longer-term game here.
And I think the president would argue this is America first if it means that my children can grow up with a nuclear-free Iran and not have their brains blown out because Iran now has a nuclear weapon when my children, who are 3, are 13.
All right, show me the money. Show me that it will be free of nuclear weapons forever.
Hey, amen to that.
We're waiting.
Amen to that. I agree with that. Amen
waiting.
to that.